Hello pretties! We put together a super fun video going over a few different ways that you can use the Pretty Actions double exposure action. So these are super fun to play with and very customizable. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. We'll be working with 3 different images using 3 different methods for double exposure. This is the first where you kind of just overlap an image entirely onto another, creating this nice creative effect. You can see the flowers coming in here. And this second image will be placing an image inside of an object. In this case, I'll show you how to place an image inside of the flower. Notice the little girl kind of laying down there within the flower. So really fun. And lastly, we'll be going over how to create a double exposure effect with a white background. This is a really popular artistic edit that we're seeing a lot of with double exposure. So we'll show you how to get that white background if you don't already, and also how to use the double exposure actions with your image once it has a white background. Okay, so let's get started. First, we're going to complete an edit similar to this. Okay, so I'm going to click on the original double exposure action here and select play. We'll get our pop-up that notifies us that we need to open our main image that we want to insert another photo into for the double exposure effect. So let's go ahead and press continue here. And now I can navigate and find my main image. All right, here we go. And I'm going to click place. And the image automatically pops into my canvas here. I'm going to shift click on the edges here where you see the little black dots on all 4 corners. And I'm going to press enter or return. Okay, so now I have another pop-up that says open the image you would like to use for the background to blend with your main photo. And let's go ahead and press continue here. So I'm just going to open an image that I had taken of some blooming flowers earlier and click place. And actually, this is a raw image, which is why it had automatically popped up in raw here for me. That's okay, I'm gonna press okay. We'll wait for that to pop into the screen here, and I'm gonna press enter or return. Now notice the changes, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is work on my flower layer that I had placed inside of this image. To do that, we're going to click on background image. Let's go ahead and click on the actual layer itself here. Now, if you like this hazy look, you can definitely keep this layer as is, but remember that you can change the blending mode to drastically change the way that your overlay image blends with your main image. So let's click on our blending mode here. Notice at the top of your layers panel, you'll have a drop down that will be labeled screen, and that's after this action is run. So I'm going to go ahead and just explain these very briefly. If you pick any blending mode under lighten, such as screen here, your image will appear lighter and hazy. The overlay will cause that to happen. If you pick any blending mode under darken, your image, your overlay image will appear much darker. So let's go ahead and do that here for a moment. Notice how that's really dark and it's not quite fitting this image, okay? And you can get different variations depending on which particular blending mode you're clicking on here. Now, moving down to overlay, the blending modes that you click on here will all have some variation of contrast, extra contrast added within it. So let's go ahead and click on overlay. Look how nice that appears on this image. Now I had actually chosen hard light. Okay, I like how it's allowing some of that blue haziness to show through, and you can still see some of the flowers here towards the edge. However, I do think that it is a little bit too much for this image. So With this layer still selected, I'm going to click on opacity at the top right here and just bring the opacity down some, okay? Notice how that's looking quite a bit nicer. I'll keep that right around 26%, okay? Now I'm going to go to my next issue here is some of the overlay. The second image that we had applied is on her face, and I don't really want it to appear on her face. So I'm going to click on the layer mask. That's the little white rectangle directly to the right of my top layer here, labeled background image. So when using layer masks, always remember that black conceals and white reveals, okay? So with my layer mask selected, I'll want to make sure that I have a brush. Just right click on your tools panel. If you don't see it, select that brush tool. Make sure black is the foreground color since black conceals, and we want to conceal this overlay on her face. Okay. Next, we're going to ensure that our brush opacity up here in our options bar is at 100%. And I'll go ahead and just start clicking on my subject where I want to remove the top image. Okay, and if I just want to remove some of the top image and not all of it, I can lower the opacity. Here we're right around 50%. I can just take a little bit off the top there and just kind of smooth the edges around her so it doesn't look quite so drastic. Okay, notice how really nice and subtle that appears. Also, if you take a look above your background image and main image here, we have a few additional layers in our layers panel. Okay, each layer is labeled so you know exactly what it does. So the top here is labeled matte. Notice when I select this layer by clicking on the little square next to it, the little eye icon, I'm turning that on and I'm getting a really nice, deep, rich matte effect. Now down below that, I have Make It Cool. I'm gonna click on that icon and I have a really nice, cool tone that's added to my image here. Next, we have Add Warmth. Okay, now keep in mind, each one of these, just click on the individual layer and you can change and adjust the opacity if it's a bit too strong. Okay, next down we have Add Contrast and Make Black and White. So super, super simple set to work with and really a lot of fun with creating all of these different looks. Let's go ahead and move on to our second image here where we had placed an image inside of the flower. So again, I'm going to run the original double exposure action because my image is horizontal. If I had a vertical image, I would of course click on the vertical original double exposure action. And I'm going to press play, continue, and I'm just gonna navigate to where I have that image saved. Okay, let's go ahead and resize the image to fit the canvas. Press enter or return. And continue. We're going to pick our next image that we want to overlay. Place. Now this one's not going to be quite so big, so I'm going to shift click and resize it pretty small here because I know I want it to fit within that flower. Now keep in mind, I'm going to press enter or return here. If it's still a bit big, that's fine. I still have the capability of resizing it, okay? Now again, I'm going to click on my background image layer. Notice how she's quite faded and I can barely see her with the screen blending mode. So I'm going to click on it and we're going to click overlay. And now I'm just going to bring the opacity up quite a bit here. We'll probably leave that right around 90%. All right, so now our issue is that I can still see the entire rectangle of the image. I want it to appear that she's just in the flower petals themselves. So to do that, again, we're going to click on the layer mask here. Black conceals, so make sure you have black at the foreground color at the bottom of your tools panel. Make sure you have that brush selected and bring the opacity back up to 100%. Okay, I'm just going to start removing some of the corners here, and then I'll zoom in and really perfect. I'm just grabbing my zoom tool, and I'm really gonna perfect the edges around the petals here. Super, super simple, guys. Okay, I also don't want it to appear on the green stem, so I'm gonna remove that as well. And you may find that you have to lower the opacity just to make it easier for you to see where you're erasing, and then you can bring that right back up later on. Okay, if you make any mistakes, let me finish up around the top here. And I'm just being super quick about this. Of course, you'll want to take the time to make sure you have nice, clean, crisp edges. But let me go ahead and erase some in the middle here. So say that was an accident and you need to reveal what you had accidentally erased. Remember that white reveals. So I'm going to bring white to my foreground color and just paint that right back in there. Layer masks are very forgiving and super simple to use. So don't worry if you make that mistake, you can definitely bring that back into the image. So I'm just going to bring the opacity back up to about 90% there. Click my zoom tool, fit screen, and voila, super simple to use. So real quick here, you do still have your additional adjustment layers here in your layers panel. However, if you take a look in your actions, you also have a cool action called Add Pastel Colors. So let's go ahead and play that real quick here. Notice at the top of my layers panel, I have a folder that says Open, Add Pastels. Now each color has two versions here, okay? Notice I have orange film and pastel orange, and that repeats down the list. There's yellow film, pastel yellow. The film version will add a nice, deep, rich color to your image. Okay, notice how it's a little bit darker, nice and rich. Now the pastel version is bright and hazy. Okay, notice the difference there. So let's move on to the yellow. Okay, blue. Lots of different options. And again here, you can click on the actual layer itself and adjust the opacity. Don't feel afraid to adjust opacity if you feel that it's overpowering your image. Very easy to adjust and customize these actions. All right, so let's move on to our last example here with the white background. Okay, I'm just going to exit out of these. Okay, so this is going to be our final result. Now to complete this, I had used the square double exposure action. I'm going to click on it and press play. Now I can open my main image. And I'm just going to navigate to that image here. Here we are, and let's go ahead and press place. It's okay. I'm just gonna resize this image to fit within my square canvas here. Okay, again, I'm shift clicking to keep the original dimensions, and I can move her around. Let's see, I really like that. I'm going to go ahead and press enter or return. There we go, and continue. Now I had a cityscape, so we're going to go ahead and place that in there as well. Okay, so again, I can go back and resize this later because at the moment it's kind of hard to find where the city falls within her. And that's okay. So let's go ahead and press enter or return. Okay, so now we're going to adjust our background image. Again, I'm going to click on this layer within the layers panel. Click on my move tool here at the top of the toolbar, and I'm just going to adjust this and find where it works best with her. Let's see here. I'm just gonna readjust. Here we go. Okay, so I'm really liking that. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Now again, we have an issue with some of the buildings falling on her face and on baby. So I'm going to click on the layer mask, remembering that black conceals. Bring black to the foreground color, select your brush, make sure the opacity is at 100%. And I'm changing the size of my brush by pressing the left and right bracket keys. Now I'm going to work with a lower opacity. Keep in mind when you lower your brush opacity, the more you stroke over a certain area, the more you will remove. So if you click over an area several times, you'll remove more of the enhancement or the overlay each time. And I just want to make sure that I don't have any on baby's face or her hand here. Okay, and I'm just going to remove a little bit from her hand on towards the bottom of the image. Okay, so I'm really liking that. I think it looks quite nice. I do see a little bit of a line faded from the horizon here, so I'm just going to go over that as well and just kind of erase the enhancement. Okay, and I can lower the opacity a little bit more just to blend that out. Okay, and that's looking really nice. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the opacity here. We can bring that all the way down. We can work our way up and just see where that really fits best with our image. I'm going to keep this one at 50%. Now again, you can play with the different blending modes, keeping in mind what each one does. Notice lighten, color dodge, okay? Screen usually looks pretty good when you have a white background. Notice what happens when I select multiply, it gets super dark. Overlay, we have that added contrast. So we're going to stick with screen here. And again, we still have these extra adjustment layers to make different adjustments to this particular enhancement. I'm going to add a little bit of matte and just bring the opacity down a little bit. We can make that cool, make it warm. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast and just bring that opacity down a bit again here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a quick look. Notice you also have an option to add texture, okay? I'm going to click on it and press play. Okay, and we're going to click on grain at the top here and just bring the opacity down a little bit. We'll keep that right around 13%. And that's looking pretty awesome. I love it. Okay, so real quick here, we're going to go over what to do if you have a nice image that you want to use and you want it to have that nice clean white background, but aren't quite sure how to go about that. Okay, so I'm going to open up an image here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let me go ahead and zoom in on this just a little bit here. So first thing I want to do is click on my quick selection tool. Okay, once you have that selected over here in the tools panel, if you don't see it, just right click and click on that quick selection tool. I'm going to make a selection of just my subject. Try and make it as perfect as you can. That can be quite hard, especially when you have the fine detail like little hairs that you want to select and such, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a moment. Now notice here in my options tool I have the brush with the minus sign selected. That's going to detract or subtract rather from my selection. I want the plus sign selected. So I'm going to select that and continue making my selection here. Notice as I'm dragging the tool across my subject, I am extending my selection. Okay, so this is looking pretty good to me. Now, if I had made too much of a selection and I need to take some of the selection away or bring it back a little bit. Then I would grab the brush with the minus sign up here, my options panel, and just push that down towards where I want it to be. Okay, so now that I have her completely selected, depending on your version of Photoshop, you may or may not have this, but I'm going to select Refine Edge. So now I have the option to really perfect my selection here and include any stray hairs and such, just to make my selection look much cleaner. So under the view mode, I usually keep black or white on the background just so I can really see the difference between my selection and what's behind it. So I'm going to keep mine on white. And under edge detection, I'm going to select Smart Radius and just bring the slider up to about 2. Adjust edge. You don't have to have these really exact, but I like to move mine up just ever so slightly to get a nice clean selection. Okay, so, and you can use the exact position that I had moved my sliders as well. That's absolutely fine. Now you'll notice that I have a little brush when this opens. To make it larger, I can go to my options panel and just bring that slider up slightly. And I'm going to drag the brush over her hair. Notice what happens here. Notice how all the little fine hairs towards the bottom are being selected and added to my selection. It's absolutely perfect. Okay, and I'm just going to go down around her body here just to make sure that my selection is nice and smooth. Okay, and I'm really liking that. Once you're done, you can go ahead and press OK. Okay, I have a nice clean selection. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my background layer by selecting Layer, Duplicate Layer. You can rename that. I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. So now I need to invert my selection. I'm going to right click and click on Select Inverse. Okay, now everything but my subject is being selected. And at this point, I can go to Edit, Fill, and White. Now, if you don't see white, you can click on the Contents drop-down and select white from that and press OK. And I'm just going to deselect here. Notice how she's on a nice, clean, white background. I can now go to File, Save As, save this image and select it after I run one of my double exposure actions to get that nice clean white background and be extra creative. Alright pretties, that is all for this video. I hope everyone really enjoys the double exposure actions. They're so much fun to play with and there's really endless possibilities. And we hope to see you on our Facebook group sharing some of that pretty art.